On number 7, we're asked to factor out the GCF. So remember, GCF just means the greatest common factor from the expression here. So remember, your answer will have the GCF and then in parentheses what's left over after you factor it out of each term. So remember, terms are separated by addition or subtraction, so we have 3 terms. So when we factor out the GCF, we will have 3 terms inside the parentheses that are left over. Now first, let's look at the numbers, the coefficients, which are the numbers in front. We have a 2, an 8, and a 10. If we look at the factor pairs for each one of these numbers, the numbers that multiply to get 2 are 1 and 2. 8, we have 1 and 8, and 2 and 4. And 10, we have 1 and 10, and 2 and 5. We're looking for the largest number that's a factor of all 3 of these numbers. So the largest number I see in common for all of them is a 2. So we know that number-wise, we have a 2 in our GCF. They also all have an x and they all have a y. So we know we'll have an x and a y, but we've got to know what the exponents are on each one of those. And that's always the smallest exponent of each one of those variables. So x has an exponent of 4 here. It doesn't have an exponent here, so remember that's the understood 1. And then it has a 2 here. So they all have one x in common. So we're just going to pull out an x to the first. As far as the y's, we have a y to the second, y to the 8th, and y to the 11th. So they all have a y to the second that can be factored out. So it's always the smallest exponent of each variable that they all have. So now to find our leftovers, we're going to divide each one of these terms by 2xy to the second. And write the answer in our leftovers in the parentheses. So in the first term, 2 divided by 2 is just 1. We have an x to the 4th over an x, which remember you subtract those exponents. 4 minus 1 is 3. So we have an x to the 3rd power left in our first term. The y's to the second cancel out since we have one in the numerator and the denominator, and anytime you divide a number by itself, you get just 1. So in our first term, we just have an x to the 3rd. We can check and make sure that's right by multiplying 2xy to the second times x to the 3rd. We would have 2 times 1 giving us 2, and x times x to the 3rd, adding exponents, 1 and 3 make 4, and then a y to the second without another y to add exponents with, just stays with y to the second. So now we're ready to do our second term. So first of all, we have a negative 8 divided by 2, which gives us a negative 4. We have an x to the first over an x to the first, which dividing a number by itself is just 1, so those cancel. And then y to the 8th over y to the second, subtract, gives us y to the 6th. Again, we can check. Multiply the 2xy to the second times the negative 4y to the 6th. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. X times the not having another x to add exponents with will just stay an x. And y to the second times y to the 6th, you would add exponents and get y to the 8th. So now our final term, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and it's positive, so we're going to put plus 5. X to the second over x to the first, when we subtract exponents, would give us x to the first. And y to the 11th over y to the second, when we subtract exponents, gives us y to the 9th. And finally, we can check. Multiplying our GCF, 2 times 5 is 10. X times x, adding exponents, 1 plus 1 is 2. Y to the second times y to the 9th, add exponents, 2 plus 9 is 11. So when your factored answer would be the 2xy to the second times, in parentheses, x cubed minus 4y to the 6th plus 5xy to the 9th. This is your answer.